that we have a lot of symbols of white supremacy in our community that we need to work to remove. But I first want to read this quote. This piece of art was done by a comrade of ours in ATL Radical Art, which is an incredible group of artists, a collective of phenomenal artists. And this is really important because we know DeKalb County is organizing to put a statue in the place where the Lost Cause Monument was. Do y'all know what statue that is? John Lewis. But it doesn't, yeah, I want to see a statue of John Lewis, I do. But it doesn't make sense to me that we do that while this still stands, right? I think it's hypocritical. I want to read this quote from Susan Harjo. And this is something that speaks to what John Lewis believed in. He supported Native rights and never questioned our priorities, from children, health, education and jobs, programs, social, racial, gender justice issues, to protecting sacred places, religious freedom and ancestors, to museum and institution building, to dropping Custer and designating the Little Bighorn National Monument. Again, this is from a Native American woman by the name of Susan Harjo that speaks to what John Lewis believed in. And if he was a staunch advocate of Native American rights, how can we leave that relic there and have a statue of him just a few feet away? How can we do that? So if DeKalb County insists on erecting that statue, we have to insist as the people that they remove this relic. So it starts with us understanding the history of knowing how this relic came to be and why it still stands, and us sharing that history with other people, with other community members. So thank you, Javier, Dr. Bolton, and Dr. Burbridge for telling the truth today. But we're not done. Next, we're going to hear from Anthony Downer. Brother Anthony, I have so much respect for you. Where are you, brother? All right. Come on up, Anthony. He's a social studies educator with Frederick Douglass High School and also what I would consider a revolutionary. He's going to be speaking on what was happening in Decatur, DeKalb, when the cannon was placed in 1906. Thank you, Anthony.
How we doing? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm not a native of Decatur. I'm a native of Norcross, so I appreciate the warm welcome. Thank you so much for welcoming me to this event, and also committing to authentic history. Because if I may, for a moment, our authentic history telling is under attack. Our own governor, our own Board of Education, Department of Education wants teachers to not tell the truth. And as a teacher, I teach in Atlanta Public Schools at Frederick Douglass High School on the west side. I previously taught in Gwinnett County Public Schools. We are going to teach about race. We will teach about culture. We will teach about identity. We will teach it all. And we will. There's a reason I'm not in Gwinnett County Public Schools anymore. We will put our jobs on the line for it.
Come on, Anthony.
We're not afraid of it.
Come on.
Right? And that might come, bring it on. Whatever comes next, bring it on. And in fact, I just added critical race theory to my curriculum for ethnic studies. So they're teaching about that too.
Yes!
So it's on. It's on. But I'm proud to stand here as a history teacher, as a social studies teacher on behalf of Black students, teaching about what they need to hear, about where they've come from and where we're going next. I'm also here as an organizer. I serve as the outgoing co-chair of Gwinnett Educators for Equity and Justice. We're taking this fight to board meetings, to the streets, to classrooms, every which way, to social media, so we can make sure our students learn their history. And so I'm proud today to talk a little bit about the context, that when this relic was put up, what was going on in the city of Atlanta, throughout Metro Atlanta, and in the United States. What we need to understand about American history is that white supremacy and power does not go away. It shifts, it changes, it evolves and molds in response to Black progress. And so the Civil War ended in 1865, and we had a period began that was called Reconstruction. And for Black people, that was a reconstruction of something they didn't have before. It was construction for the first time of identity separate from enslavement. But we know that slavery didn't end, right? We look no further than the actual language of the 13th Amendment to know that slavery and indentured servitude were still used as punishment. And therein we have the second coming of enslavement, mass incarceration. But still, as Black people are, they were resilient.
That's right.
We have some of the first HBCUs built after the end of the Civil War, stretching all across the United States, not just the South. We had something that Dr. Jarvis Givens of Harvard calls fugitive pedagogy, in which black teachers would risk their livelihood and their jobs, as we do now, to teach black students our history. And so we know stories of teachers that would hide textbooks written by W.E.B. Du Bois and Carter G. Woodson in place of white supremacist textbooks passed by the United Daughters of the Confederacy. But they pushed on to make sure that history was known. Right here in Georgia, we had pop-ups of many HBCUs that joined all across the South. Bethune-Cookman College was founded in the early 1900s. Carter G. Woodson is studying at my alma mater, University of Chicago, where he's studying history, getting ready for more of that fugitive pedagogy. We have individuals like W.E.B. Du Bois, who publishes The Souls of Black People, the souls of black folks, to talk more about how we become agitators and disruptors to demand our civil rights. And in the state of Georgia, even though black women didn't have the right to vote, black people were exercising their right. Even though we had racists, Democrats, and Republicans vying for the votes of white folks, we had black voters exercising their political power. We also, for the first time, had an increase in competition between white workers and black workers. And that was not supposed to happen. In fact, we have individuals like Alonzo Hernandez, who was an entrepreneur, the embodiment of all that Booker T. Washington talked about when he talked about entrepreneurship and hard work. He began to establish himself in the city of Atlanta, and that pissed a lot of white folks off. In fact, his barbershop became the #1 location for white customers. He became a competitor to white folks. And so with the backdrop of this black progress, white supremacy chose violence as a means to react and to respond. We know at this time that black people could also not only not tell their own history, but not only keep record of their narratives. Black newspapers were under attack, and newspapers like the Atlanta Journal, the Atlanta Constitution, the Georgian, would repeatedly push out false stories. Stories of black men attacking white women as sexual predators. Stories also of rising crime rates and the danger of living in the city of Atlanta. So that was 1906. Fast forward to 2021. What stories do the AJC publish today? Stories of rising crime rates and an unsafe city and white victims of black attackers. History is not new. History repeats itself, right? Buckhead is the code word for white Atlanta. And so these stories, of course, were the fuel that groups like the KKK needed to pounce and respond to black progress with violence. On the evening of September 22nd, 1906, a mere 115 years ago from next month, these white mobsters had all the fuel they needed to pounce on black victims. They began to randomly attack black residents beginning at 5 points. I argue, though, that the massacre, what we call a riot, the massacre began at the headquarters of newspapers like the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. That's where the massacre began. And I use massacre, I teach my students that language is powerful.
That's right.
To call it a riot means that there were equal sides. There were no equal sides, folks.
Come on, Anthony.
This was a massacre intentionally on black bodies, and we should call it like we see it. And so on that evening, white mobsters coming down from Dekalb, from Gwinnett, from Hall, gathered, thousands of them. And over the next 2 days, they engaged in senseless, random attacks on black homes, black families, black businesses. They went up and down Peachtree Street, Auburn Avenue, Marietta Street. That's not far from here, to attack black businesses. In fact, Herndon, who again owned the barbershop, narrowly escaped a fire. They burned and pillaged killing even some white folks so they can pull off black passengers of streetcars, so they can throw them off of Forsyth Bridge, so they can attack them in their homes and their vehicles on their way to and from work and school. They did not want black progress. They did not want any black existence outside of enslavement, and they used their violence intentionally. It was an attempt at genocide. It was an attempt at genocide. And for 2 days it raged on, while the governor at the time said he had no idea. He wouldn't call the state militia until the third day, not until black people began to arm themselves and respond. And as the violence raged on, black men shot back. They fought back. And up to 3 individuals who were white died. About 10 individuals who were white were injured. We still don't know how many black bodies there were. Official accounts today say somewhere between 10 and 25 black people were dead, about 90 injured. That's the floor. We don't even know the ceiling. We don't even know the ceiling. But we do know that after this violence, we do know who was punished. The state of Georgia and the city of Atlanta doubled down on their anti-blackness. Now, of course, in the city of Atlanta, this violence was bad for business. And white business owners and black business owners came together and started building a city too busy to hate, where they said they would not have this violence and they would stick with segregated businesses. They began segregating black and white businesses even more, and that's where we have Sweet Auburn, where some of our biggest and best known black businesses were segregated. No longer could they go down and freely all throughout downtown Atlanta. We also had a doubling down of racism in politics. And Hoke Smith, who was once the owner of the racist Atlanta Journal, went on to become governor, a Democrat. And he doubled down on his rhetoric against black people. So not only could they not shop where they wanted, not only could they not live where they wanted, they couldn't even exercise a constitutional right of voting. The victims and those punished for the Atlanta massacre were black people. And today, again, the city of Atlanta, as black as it is, we describe it as a black Mecca, and yet the victims and those punished for housing, as education, politics are black people, are the residents, like the students I teach on the west side, who can't afford to live on the other side of Atlanta, who many times are not educated enough to vote. A part of Atlanta where a large majority of those in the penitentiary down the street go, and a large majority who compose the victims of human trafficking today. History is not unique. It repeats itself. It repeats itself. And so as we see recent gains and advancements in black progress, you're sure to see a lot of that white lash against that progress. And what are we to do? I challenge us teachers to stay strong. If you're not willing to get fired for other people's children, you're in the wrong profession. Please leave.
Wow.
Please leave. And I challenge our white residents, our white Georgians, and citizens and residents of Metro Atlanta. Teach-ins like this are a really good start. They're not enough. It's too comfortable in here. We've gotten too comfortable. Every single day, white folks have to think about a new way, a more uncomfortable way, to strip yourselves of the privilege and the rights that your ancestors gave to you. Because anti-blackness and racism and white supremacy are not past relics. Like this relic here, they're still standing strong, molding and evolving to progress, but never going away. And I hope that my white brothers and sisters pick up their sledgehammers, like we should have sledgehammers today.
That's right.
To tear down the relics, the privileges that you have, that your forefathers gave you. But we have to do it in a way that continues to allow for black leadership and black voices so that those descendants of enslaved Africans are not pushed out of the movements that we have built. But we can move forward hand in hand. So please, if you're a parent of the school system, you should be at board meetings. You should be at PTA meetings, demanding equity, demanding social emotional learning, restorative practices and discipline, representative history and curricula across the board, and interventions and supports for all of our students of color. That is our duty. And if you have any level of power, whether it's elected, whether it's monetary, you should be using it to the full extent to make sure our country does not go back. Thank y'all so much. Love and peace from Gwinnett.